A very good afternoon to everyone. And I think Professor Subbarao said you were wake up call in the morning. I think you are still awake and listening to me. Thank you for giving this opportunity, Rashmi ma'am, to our distinguished guests who are present here. It's an honor for us to be, hosting them today. The ideas that they bring today in terms of sharing their understanding about environmental issues and law in particular is something that we all look forward to, and it's a treat, intellectual treat that we are in for today. So thank you for gracing this occasion and sharing us your insight. I would, as Professor Venkatos has said, that I'll be addressing more for the students' sake, because the rest, the faculty members and the scholars who are presenting papers here, and they would have much more in-depth, knowledge of what this subject is all about. What is being called as, environmental genocide, in today's time, is something, is a concern. And storytelling, should I do it the storytelling way? Because that's more interesting in terms of, wanting to understand what these issues are and how the world is at the tipping point, and why setting out of certain boundaries that have been recasted now. A research which has been done recently, which is very recent, I would say, maybe 6 months within the time, where environmental scientists along with social scientists came out, studied 200 research papers which have been, or reports for the matter, which have been done in the past. They did their own modeling as to understand what would be the tipping points for the world, and why is this a concern for us as humanity, right? And are we really, as Sir said, are we actually on the brink, and the situation, is it really that grim that we will not be able to recover from this kind of disaster that we are into? The story, I don't know how many of you have, how dare you, have you heard this somewhere? The students, have you heard this somewhere? How dare you? Who said that? Yeah, and why did that happen? And there's something which he promoted was a Friday for Future, which is taking a day off in schools just to sensitize people in policy framework to take it seriously, take environmental issues more seriously. How many of you can do that today? Is my question to you. Not putting this, asking in VIPS that we should be off, but then how many of you can actually take up this kind of, thing? See, this conversation, which was happening in Davos, which is, where all the world leaders meet, and, the business leaders, possibly, as we say, they are more responsible for the kind of, ecological damage that has been done today, because they have only cared for profits and not for people or for society, and they have kind of pocketed those profits into their private purses. I still remember these Sami, it has a little negative attachment to it when Nadia tapes were leaked. When Veer Sangvi came out with an interesting editorial and put out a counter view on how oligarchs are kind of profiteering private money into their own pockets and using natural resources for their own benefits rather than do it for society. With that kind of mindset, do you really think things are going to change? And with legislation, yes, it helps, but then how much can you legislate on each aspect of human behavior and conduct? We possibly, it is a collective call. I think we all need to, work together in this. I was, again, as I mentioned, Davos was where I was, kind of looking for more information as to what world business leaders are thinking about their Fortune 500 companies present there. And, Al Gore, everybody knows, possibly, first started championing the cause, said that how many, politicians have this kind of an issue on their manifestos. And there are hardly any, politicians or policymakers that you'll find that they have something to, share on environmental issues. None of them. And that's what, possibly places you in a very difficult situation. Because they are the actual, lawmakers in terms of what they can legislate in either the parliament or the legislative wing for that matter, and they are the ones who have least understanding of, and it's no criticism, but then it's kind of a deeper understanding of issues that people bring along with them. He quoted Brazil as one of the cases where, and there was, a Colombian president which was present, whose main agenda during the conversation and when we actually fought the election was about social justice and environment protection. And he won with a thumping majority, but then he again is, being bullied by the big business houses because the oil majors, they have their own, as you say, influences within the government, and they would not want any kind of legislation to come. Decarbonizing is becoming equally important for us. There are 16 points. The research that I mentioned, where 200 research reports of the past were studied by scientists using real data now, because we have data and data sciences which has come in using imagery from NASA, real time imagery coming in from NASA. They have used those kind of data to actually explorate as to how much time do we have now. And the critical mark that was set out long back was 1 degree centigrade. Now it's been 1.5, and it's a very realistic, now it is a very scientific backed, data which has been given by them, that it's really alarming and it's coming at your knocking at your doors. 16 tipping points across the world that have been laid out. I would request you to read it out, and I don't want to repeat it here for the simple reason because there are 16 ecological and biodiversity reasons and areas that they've identified which form the entire ecosystem of this planet, and how sensitive they are. In Greeceland, ice sheets being melting, and permafrost, carbon permafrost melting out, and then how it kind of influences monsoons. In Amazon, for that matter, Amazon, they are really concerned because there are a lot of fires that are happening now, and deforestation combined, they say that this rate would be faster. Of the 16 parameters, they have already claimed that we have crossed 5 of them, and that will be an irreversible damage that cannot be brought back in terms of what we expect this Mother Nature to do. Another 2 or 3 degrees temperature, it would have another cascading and a domino effect on another 6 parameters that are even more crucial than what possibly is being done today. And the last would possibly require 7 degree rise in the temperature. We hope that we don't reach that point. What is the world actually doing about it? And I was looking to a lot of research papers from universities. There's brilliant work being done, I must tell you, and very hopeful as to what needs to what we should look up to, other than legislation for that matter. There's a technology developed by MIT, which is basically dealing with agriculture. Now, pesticides have been concerned, and the nitrogen level within pesticides have been concerned. And the boundaries that have been recasted, by these scientists have again, put nitrogen to be more dangerous because it kind of contaminates your groundwater to soil to everything. So what they say now is that there is a machine now that has been developed which uses AI as its tool basically, where it can inject pesticide as and when required by a particular plant, and not just kind of wide distributed in terms of what we do farming as. And why does it revolutionize agriculture? Because food is going to be the next big problem that this planet is going to face. China has already started going taking land in different countries only for farming purposes. It is only trying to feed its population back there, and same may happen with India for that matter, because whatever resources that we have, and within those parameters, as I was saying, 1.5 degrees centigrade, there is, the land that we have now, 60% if we do not protect the lungs, that is the trees, it is going to be another breaking point where, we would kind of collapse in terms of the ecological disaster that it may bring in. So things are alarming. These are technologies that are coming. There's another one which is, basically renewable energy is now 90% of the capacity is being done by, either solar or wind power. The challenge really was that how do we store, because whatever gets done, there is a limited capacity to batteries. How can it be done? There is a Sweden, university which has developed a cell which can be fitted into your smartphone, right? And when you fit it into your smartphone, they send it to a Chinese university where they, stored it for 18 hours. That anything that was, taken from sun got stored there for 18 hours because they use something called isomers. Within isomers, they have, kind of developed a special material which is made of aluminum and graphite, which, liquidates and kind of, reuse the sun energy, and you can possibly store it for 18 hours. Those are, ideas that are going to revolutionize the world. There is a one .org is the website by Salesforce, planting 1 trillion trees for the matter to make get back your lungs back. I was checking on Delhi, air index today. That was 6 times higher than what WHO possibly would have. Are we living? And when people go for morning walk, I normally wonder. I'm not a morning person, but then I do normally wonder: is it good to be on the outside or be on the inside? Because it's the advisory given today is that you remain indoors, keep your doors closed, have a purifier put in. So are we actually living having the cleanest of air? Garbage is another problem that is going to come. We see a heat here, which is just close by. America, the kind of heat that it generates, I don't know the data that is available with us here. I was still looking, but I could not find any credible data out here. US generates enough amount of and if we think that our garbage problem is solved by dumping them somewhere, it generates equal amount of CO2 when you pile them up, which is equivalent to 20 million cars. So are we actually shifting it from one form to another one, and is it kind of aggravating those problems? So legislation, yes, has to be there, but I think our own behavior as human beings need to change, and we need to fundamentally rethink about what we do. There's an interesting definition of insanity: doing same things again and again and expecting different results. So are we not in that same rut where we kind of think that the minds that have created those problems, if we still keep looking for those minds to find solutions, they're never going to come to you. And this is where we kind of search into universities which are doing incredible job. There's another interesting idea that I'd like to share with you is that there's this university which has, and sorry, I could not kind of remember so many names and of the university and so on and so forth. There's this university which has it's a mushrooms, it's a donut shape, farming that they call it. What they do is when they plant the tree, they kind of put a donut shape, vessel around it. Which what it does is it creates a micro, climate for them and enough water for them to nurture that plant for initial caring. And this is where they kind of grow these trees faster, and that trees they kind of resist all kind of normally survival of trees is difficult in terms of because it has to be irrigated, it has to be taken care of. But then creating that micro environment within that donut is something which is remarkable again. And a lot many things are being done. I am quite hopeful, but the danger really lies as we see the changing weathers. February, you can see the kind of change that has happened. The temperatures that we have already hit. It is said it has happened after 12,000 years or so. I don't know. I mean, point is, we keep debating this in data, and we keep debating this in conferences like this. But then today we are lucky because we have three major influencers sitting here who are directly can influence policy and help us with whatever ideas that we have today. So that's a great blessing today that we have today with us, and that's how the world needs to understand. There was this interesting coming to the business side of wine and plastic. Again, I'll share that idea also with you. 9% of the plastic gets recycled. Only 9% of what is recyclable gets recycled, because the problem is that it is costly to segregate, sort, and then kind of recycle it. So what they end up doing is they create more new plastic rather than kind of get into a recycling. So these are economic front challenges that we'll have to see from, because everything that is being done and all development that we see, as Professor Venkat also was mentioning, any development, the challenge between the binary, development versus, environment, is still a bigger issue because it has to be dealt with a different framework altogether. Legislation would help. I was more hopeful. I was given a short note by a faculty here that New Zealand kind of protected, its river by giving them a status of human beings, which was, given to our Ganga and Yamuna also. But then later, I think that was challenged in Supreme Court and still, not able to see the light. We revere them so much. We say the Ganga maa hai, paap dhul jayenge. But then point is that reverence, when it comes to protecting those natural resources and those natural sources of fresh water, I don't know why are we being so criminal to them. And I know that those are religious sentiments involved and a lot of understanding that has to happen at different levels. But then that's how we need to mature up as enlightened citizens, for that matter, to actually see how we translate these goals into reality. I have few more points which kind of, so I told you about how the systems are changing, 16 tipping points that are there. So what it does is Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, which is another subsystem of the larger system, which is changing Indian monsoons also in times to come. So those are globally recognized 7 tipping points. Then, as somebody said, that we have to kind of find local solutions to what our environmental damage is all about. I have worked in mines also, sir. I've seen the kind of extraction that goes on there, unmindful mining that is being undertaken. What is promised normally is not what is extracted. There are government permissions which are required to extract X amount. They are given the targets, but normally private operators would exceed the kind of extraction that they do without having to replant or do a replantation there. I've seen overloading of trucks happening and the entire iron ore being spilled over on the sidelines of the road. It's a complete wastage that I could see with my own eyes. The kind of health hazards that have been produced there, because a lot of dust that goes in, and staff members normally don't wear masks, and what happens is that they kind of have deposits on their lungs and they start getting sick after working there for a year or so. They start getting sick. So there are enough regulations. I don't say that regulations are not required, but then I think what needs to change is the fundamental thinking that we have about these issues and how we need to conduct ourselves. Lastly, there's something called an idea promoted by Whole Food. I don't know how many of you know what Whole Food is all about. It's co-owner Mete, and there was an Indian professor, Professor Joshi, I think. Let me just see. Sisodia, sorry. So Professor Raj Sisodia. They come up with a concept called conscious capitalism, because earlier they found that there are fundamental flaws with the business models that we have, and those fundamental flaws cannot be kind of undone till the time we do not bring in certain amount of responsibility into what corporate governance is all about. ESG reporting is very poor in India, unfortunately, because a lot of those issues related to environment, and social impacts and governance are completely missing. The independent directors, unfortunately, do not have the competencies about what environmental issues are involved. How many of you have bought those data packs with a vegan sign and a non-vegetarian? But then how many of you checked that whether it's eco-friendly or not? How many? So that comes to you also, because there is a lot of consumption that happens from you, and they only get emboldened when you consume products which are. So yes, you can say there are no options available, there are no alternatives available to a particular product, but then somewhere the responsibility lies on us as well as consumers, because if we do not consume responsibly, this is going to happen, because they'll be driven by greed, they'll be driven by their own agendas, and expecting any corporate to forget about profit is not going to be easy. So what conscious capitalism talks about is that you care for a higher purpose other than profit, which is caring of taking care of your stakeholders, not just stakeholders in terms of investors, but society or vendors, right? And it's a complete, ecosystem and a chain that they, kind of talk about that they need to be revolutionized in terms of what they do. And the last that they talk about is that the owner himself needs to have certain ethics in business, and which should be about we, not me. And that's how we can, they expect that this model can transform, business houses, and many of them have started adopting. Starbucks is one good example. There are many companies which are following, similar kind of, formats. I think I'm almost done. I've got many examples on my phone. I can go on, but then I think time is limited. And that's what I need to. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.